Hello and welcome to Mindful Live 138. It is the 14th of October already. It is Friday, the last day of the week. Thank God for Friday. Another week gone, another week successful. Hopefully, for those of you inside of the life. Today, we're talking, at least we're starting to talk tonight about the work from home policies. We've been talking about it a while, and today I went to South today. I went to San Fernando today. And on my way to South, I was watching the northbound lane and traffic. Traffic going all the way down. Then when I was coming back from South, I recognized, wait, nah, this traffic is still there waiting to catch me on the way back towards back north. It is ridiculous. And to consider, if we are considering that some percentage of the people inside of that crowd can do the very same thing that they are in that traffic to do. They can stay in their home and do it the same way. I would think that no stone should be left unturned in finding out ways to successfully do that. I would think so. That seems to me like an obvious thing. If this situation can be alleviated even by a small percentage, I would think as much as is possible, we would be heading in that direction. Now, we've seen it said, well, initially, this People's National Movement government, the current ruling government in Trinidad and Tobago, they initially said that part of their election promise was going to work on this work from home policy. Now that they are in power, well, they don't seem like they're very interested in it anymore. And recently in the budget, the budget that has gone now, an announcement was made that $1 million is being allotted for them to look into this work from home policy. And it's being headed up by the Ministry of Public Administration. Okay. And when I looked at the Ministry of Public Administration's input during the budget, well, at least the ministers, and I looked at what they had to say about this work from home policy, there were lots of contradictions. Indar Singh, Minister West contradicting earlier position on work from home policy. Now, Mr. Indar Singh, who is Kuva South MP, Rujanat Indar Singh, has called out Public Administration Minister Alison West over her apparent dismissal on remote work and work from home approaches in the public service. In a statement, Indar Singh said her statements contradicted previously stated positions on the same matter by the current People's National Movement-led administration. The MP took note that earlier utterances from the government praised the concept and impact of work from home policies. Yes, and that is true. Now, there was a nice little snippet put together here by journalist Kijan Haynes over on Twitter. This isn't a full recording of her speech. Ain't no way we're going to listen to a full politician's speech. We aren't trying to go to sleep yet. But it's edited, obviously. You would see where the cuts are. And listen to the snippets inside of this. And if you listen to these snippets, it's so contradictory. One thing being said contradicts the other thing that is being said. Now, if you are streaming this live over on TikTok or on Instagram, you can head over to my YouTube channel at any point in time, Nathan Spring on YouTube, and subscribe there. That's where you'd actually be able to see what I am seeing and read what I'm reading when I'm reading the articles there. But let's listen in to this bit of speech.
This government has demonstrated that its first priority is not about winning elections, but about securing the future of Trinidad and Tobago. In going about the required transformation of the public service, the objective cannot be to change things just for the sake of changing them. This cannot be achieved by running helter-skelter after shiny objects. An example of this is the much-touted work-from-home policy. While we recognize that work from home has the potential to positively impact on public service productivity, citizen engagement, and satisfaction and other factors, we are also aware that if not properly executed, giving due consideration to all the factors, the unintended consequences could be nothing short of disastrous. A part
Okay.
of any leadership position is risk taking.
Now, that first bit that she spoke there, let's not go chasing after shiny objects. We have to be very careful in how we go about implementing these new things. We have to really focus in and make sure that it makes sense before we implement it. Okay, fine, okay.
Position is risk taking. But for whatever reason, there seems to be an abundance of caution among our public service leaders. One of the changes I am trying to bring about is the creation of a culture of risk assessment and responsible risk taking in our public service.
Somebody explain that one to me now, though. At the same time, she is saying that a negative inside of the public service is that we don't have risk takers. At the higher levels inside of the public service, they aren't willing to take the risks necessary. But then she is the same minister that is cautioning against risk in the first bit of this, where you're saying that, we shouldn't go chasing after the shiny objects. We have to make sure we check this out so well. So then if the minister is speaking like this, are you surprised really that the people under the minister aren't very enthusiastic about taking those risks?
Service leadership. We believe that citizens' frustrations are multiplied when they conclude that no one is listening and that they have no voice.
True.
And their opinions do not matter. It is my view that the public service was not designed to promote productivity and that we are seeing the results of that.
That is the Minister of Public Administration, just by the way. She is saying that the public service was not designed for productivity, and we are seeing the results of that. Now, at the same time, while saying the current public service wasn't designed for productivity, she is against changing the way how we work. We have to have extra caution when we talk about changing the way how we work and if we are implementing that work from home policy. But at the same time, we want more risk. So caution for the work from home, but more risk. We need more risk taking. But at the same time, it wasn't made for productivity. Everything seems kind of...
We understand the loss of productivity as a result of long commutes and traffic jams that could be debilitating and depressing from a business standpoint.
You have 5 more minutes.
Thank you, madam.
So, let her finish this.
Early in this contribution, I referred to the cause for a work from home policy. The passion is understandable, but the zeal must be tempered with wisdom.
So, this minister, our Minister of Public Administration, said that the public service wasn't designed for productivity, and we are seeing the effects of that. When speaking about matters that cause that lack of design for productivity, she brought up that they are aware the lack of productivity, a big part of the lack of productivity, comes from spending hours in traffic. She said that. So you're aware that the loss of productivity comes from that. She said that she is aware the public gets angry when they feel like the leaders aren't listening to them. She's aware that this work from home is something that the public wants, and it would alleviate the main problem that she saw in the reason why the public service is so inefficient, the loss of time in traffic. The work from home would alleviate some of that. But nonetheless, let's wait. While we're waiting and holding extra caution on this, though, she is saying that she wants to push for more risk-taking inside of the public service. Well, here's an idea. If we are pushing for more risk-taking, how about we encourage them to formulate their own work from home policies and implement it? There's a risk. There's a bold risk that we can go out there and take. I say that would make a lot more sense. That will make a lot more sense. It's strange to me that we are aware that a major part of what kills this country's efficiency is the traffic situation going to work in the centralized style work environment that we have? It's amazing that we are fully aware of this, but at the same time, we would use the largest amount of caution, the highest amount of caution in implementing strategies to go around that. If, as I said before, if we already got some of this work from home happening during the pandemic, can it not be evaluated how that functioned and use that same functioning to push it into the future? Apparently not. The minister who is encouraging more risk-taking inside of the public service is saying, though, let's not take that risk. Tony the ambassador says every office is different, so each should be able to create a system that works for them. I don't doubt that. And that's the same thing I'm saying. If the minister is saying that she would like more risk-taking inside of the management levels, etc., inside of the public service, well, great. Give them the authority to do that instead of waiting for some ministry to create an entire work-from-home policy to put over on the entire public service, which we are almost sure is not going to work. How about you leave each sector to try and figure out how they can do it themselves? And if we are saying that any way you take it, the public service in Trinidad and Tobago is not engineered for productivity, well, how about we experiment on some things that might increase the productivity? It's not like we're dealing with a well-oiled machine here. Roly Poly says it's also amazing that we have been discussing work from home since Kamala. Then we had COVID and still a resistance to work from home. Yes, it is kind of amazing. It is kind of amazing. And it's unnecessary. It's unnecessary. We already saw where that worked. If as they were saying, the public service is already engineered against efficiency, well, there isn't something to risk here. It's not like we're dealing with the most efficient machine out here. I mean, if you buy a Ferrari, if you buy a Lamborghini, it's not like you're going to, the day you buy it, you're going to jack it up on some blocks and go underneath and dig up in the suspension and go and see if you could lap over a cord here and go and buy a 15-inch and install it yourself in the back seat. You aren't going to do that with something like those machines, because those machines are already well-functioning machines. But if you buy something that is already not functioning too well, maybe trying something that has a high chance of working makes more sense. You're already saying that the public service isn't efficient. It doesn't make sense to me that we're so apprehensive about trying things to increase the efficiency. What's the harm there? Really, what is the harm there? And when I see things like that and the kind of apprehension we're seeing there, it makes me wonder, like, there has to be something more to it. There has to be something more to it, because it doesn't make sense on the surface level. It doesn't make sense that this is just they're cautious about, damaging the well-functioning public service. That does not make sense. So why are they so cautious? Where is this excess caution coming from? It makes you wonder if someone is getting enough benefit from things remaining the way they are, that they are resistant to it changing. That seems like the most sensible reasoning to me, actually. Now, I saw an independent senator bring up a point that anyone looking at enough of my videos knows. Once he brought this point up, he endeared himself in my heart. Really and truly, he did. Independent senator tells government, be caring. Grant citizens access to guns. Independent Senator Varma Dialsingh is calling on the government to grant citizens more firearm users licenses to help them protect themselves from being sitting ducks to bandits, as more and more home invasions are reported across the country. Speaking during yesterday's 2023 budget debate in the Senate, Dialsingh, who is also a psychiatrist, said the country was plagued by mental health issues which were caused by excessive crime. He said he believed This could be solved if citizens were allowed to take control of their lives by arming themselves. Now, this isn't coming from just any random person. This is a psychiatrist. I dare say this is professional advice. There are mental health issues in the country, and a professional advises that one way in which we may negate some of these mental health issues in our country is by allowing people access to arms and ammunition. A caring government would allow persons to get firearm users licenses to protect themselves. As daily reports say, we are sitting ducks. The Commissioner of Police mentioned that home invasions are increasing. So I am saying give persons access with the proper checks and balances, the Alsing said. His call comes 2 weeks after Finance Minister Colm Imbert announced a 100% increase in firearm user licenses fees and said the government intends to restrict citizens from accessing weapons and ammunition. I heard this in the budget and I am confused. I am confused why in a country like Trinidad and Tobago, where we are seeing the crime situation increasing, we are seeing home invasions increasing, they are making it more difficult to access legal firearms. The issue is not legal firearms. There has not been some spike in crime being committed by legal firearm users. That's not the case. So why would you, in the face of increasing crime in the country, make it more difficult for common people to access firearms? And this is why so often I regularly lament. This is my lament about our current government. I have my complaints about the opposition, but they are in opposition. But the ruling government, happy Friday, Megzi, the ruling PNM government, they really have this elitist tone down to a T. The people who are constantly protected by armed guards in a country where crime is spiking are saying that, you know what is a good idea? Let's make it harder for you, the common person, to get access to that kind of protection yourself. Yeah, that makes sense. Over the last few months, business owners and citizens have been attacked in their homes by armed bandits. The owners of Army Hardware, Ratton's Free Zone, and the restaurant owner were among recent victims. But the Alsing also noted the woes of several farmers and fisherfolk who have been victims of robbery. He said these incidents could be avoided if they were properly equipped with firearms. Roly-poly says because they would get more applicants and thus they would make it a source of income for themselves. Tony the Ambassador says there's the thinking that it would turn in the Wild West if it was easier to get a legal gun. I don't actually believe that. I don't believe that people who are generally law-abiding citizens want to kill their fellow citizens. Most people who are law-abiding citizens have access to cars. Cars are really effective at murder if you are interested in doing such. And you don't generally see random people just murdering random people. I don't agree that you're just going to see random people who are accustomed living with each other just start killing each other flippantly if you see more firearms in the country. Now, something that I do agree is a risk would be instances like, for example, the instant recently where we saw the SRP officer in the supermarket parking lot where he got into a scuffle and he shot the man and killed him. I wouldn't doubt instances such as that may happen more. That's something that may be in occurrence more. Things that may have just ended as a scuffle could possibly reach further. Now, I understand that risk, but I think that's a risk on indisciplined people because that's a crime that you are not going to escape. If you get into a scuffle with your neighbor and then you kill him, that's not something you're escaping from. You're going to jail for that. So I don't think adults are just going to randomly do things like that. Mental health, as you just said, and guns is not a good combination. That's true, but almost surely there would be stipulations that if you cannot pass a mental health check, you do not get a firearm user's license. I'm pretty sure that would be a stipulation. Give the FUL to farmers and fisher folk. This is our independent senator, Mr. Dial Singh here speaking. Give the FUL to farmers and fisher folk. We have always been hearing of the problems of predial larceny. The Minister of Agriculture mentioned it, but I've been hearing all the time about road access giving this. Let them defend themselves. Fisher folks are victims of piracy, he said. Dial Singh also slammed Minister of National Security Fitzgerald Hines for destroying 7,000 firearms 2 weeks ago at the police academy in St. James. Those guns could have been sold to the farmers at a reduced price to defend themselves. Those guns could have been sold on the international market to gun collectors. Those guns could have been given to other CARICOM nations so they could defend themselves if they could not afford to buy ammunition for their army or their police service, he said. In August 2021, the TTPS firearms units operations were placed on hold due to ongoing investigations concerning officers approving licenses without lawful authority. So he is saying that the public relations gimmick they did by destroying these firearms was a waste. And that's something that I regularly see. When I look at some of these things and you see them there sawing a firearm that is worth a couple thousand, cutting it into pieces, like, there is no logical, practical reason for that. There really isn't. Like, if it's a tool, you could still find good use for a tool. Sell it. Make some money for the government. And I agree with him here. I think farmers should be given access more readily to firearms also. I dabble in farming myself. And I would really love to have do some animal husbandry, get some animals and put them out there, get some cows, get some goats, some sheep. I would enjoy that, I think. But you can't do that. The thieves are going to make away with your livestock. I think a thief going inside of a farm should always have in his mind that in a corner, I could hear a gun crack, and that could be that. No thief should be running into a farm with his mindset being, well, I know this farmer cannot do anything. No, that shouldn't be it. He's speaking even about the fisher folk. Why not? If you are a licensed boat captain, why shouldn't it be easy for you to get access to a firearm also? There are pirates out there. Why not? I don't disagree with that. I don't see the problems in that as many people seem to have. The department, our firearm users department, only resumed again in May 2022. Yesterday, Dial Singh also listed several other policy recommendations for the government to implement. Give us tax rebates for security cameras, where we dedicate one camera to the police, where we can now follow criminals all over Trinidad. That's one of his suggestions. I am saying give persons VAT off on steel to build burglar proof. Allow white persons to give their service free of charge to build burglar proofing in some people's windows. We have to invent things where we keep people's homes safe. I as much as I understand his sentiment, I don't think burglar proof is going to work. I don't think burglar proof is the key. I regularly say on this about crime. When you look at the kind of crime that is committed in these days, our modern criminals here in Trinidad, they aren't the criminals of old looking to work all that hard work. They aren't the criminals of old starving themselves to be skinny enough to squeeze through someone's window. They're not doing all of that difficult work. They're not even learning how to pick locks to try and sneak into your house and make no sound. No, they're lazy. They're coming with a gun. When you pull up to your house, point the gun at you and tell you open the door and give me everything. That's how they're doing it. I don't think burglar proof is too much of a key in helping these days. He also called for the Defense Force to be put to greater use, deploy army personnel also in towns to work with the municipal police so they can actually go into Tunapuna, they can go into the streets, utilize the army. They have actually gotten an increase in allowance in food in this budget. So utilize the army also, so their presence will certainly deter people. I don't disagree with that either. And they went on here to list several of the recent home invasions. And I think home invasions are really at the top in criminality. Home invasion, I've said this before, with my belief on the thing with firearms, even beside whether people are walking around with firearms, I find, especially when it comes to someone's home, no way should it be, I always say this, no way should it be that a criminal could run into my home with the assurance that he is going to be safe. No way. Home invasions are supposed to be the most risky thing a criminal could even think about doing. You run into someone's home, you are not sure what's going to happen. Yeah, you have two of the members of the household here, but yeah, another member could have the shotgun behind you. No, it's a bad idea. Let's not do home invasions. But when you as a criminal, you're reasonably certain that none of these homes have any weapons in it. Once I have one gun, the rest of men in my crew could have cutlasses, and we're fine. We're fine. We know that these people in there are sitting ducks. I find that's ridiculous. No way should that be. No way. That should never be in existence, at least from that point. The senator went further in. He went into some more details. Senator, budget could fuel mental health crisis. The same independent senator said this budget had the potential of further fueling a mental health crisis in TT following the COVID-19 pandemic. He appealed to the government to increase the allocation to mental health in the allocation to the health ministry. He said the health minister had understood that the pandemic had created a mental health crisis and given additional clinics and greater access to medications and resources. He said the pre-pandemic cost of living crisis would be exacerbated by the budget measures. Dial Singh said crime had become an additional stress factor and suggested several strategies which could be used to combat this. Right. And I don't disagree with him on the psychiatry of this here. I don't disagree on the psychiatry. If you were living life at a certain level before, then we were hit by a pandemic. Who knows what that did with your life? And then there's a budget where the belt is even getting a little tighter. I don't doubt that this indeed would have a negative effect on mental health. And even more particularly on men. As we spoke about mental health, was it Wednesday? One of the days this week we spoke about mental health because the World Mental Health Day was the 10th of October was World Mental Health Day, so it was in a bit more focus. And a lot of the focus on mental health in modern times should be and is being placed on men. Because if you look at the outcomes of negative effects on mental health, you see very often it seems like men are overrepresented in that. If you look at self-harm, if you look at people self-deleting, men are overrepresented in that. And then when you look at the effects of something like a pandemic that shuts down jobs, that shuts down industries, and then you look at the effects of something like a tough budget, those effects, I'm not saying this isn't going to have an effect on women, but a lot of the effect here would be exacerbated on anyone who would have been a provider. If your position in a family was the position of provider, yeah, that's going to be a more difficult position now. And it so happens that many men are in that very same position. So men who already have more negative mental health outcomes would have gone through a pandemic that where the virus itself affected men more seriously. That's one. And then the shutdowns affected industries. And then the budget comes in here that makes it even more difficult for working class people. I agree there's some legitimate worry to be had about mental health, about the general mental health of people inside Trinidad and Tobago, as pertaining to something even as simple as the budget. Even as simple as the budget. That's the point that the senator was making there. And if not to just push that point home a little more about worries about mental health and what would happen in this coming year, and people going crazy, as it were, worrying about the things coming in this coming year. Well, here's something else you could worry about if you are someone with some age. AG to bring law for retirement at 65. Attorney General Reginald Amor vowed to bring a bill this parliamentary year to change the retirement age from current 60 to 65 years old. He said in the Senate budget debate on Friday. So if you are out here 59, just praying for those couple months to finish, and you're going to get that NIS pension, and you're just going to sit back home, take some blue waters, maybe hit a little Tobago here and there. You can't wait. Well, you have no choice but waiting now. You have 5 more years to wait. 65. While the government's official website still displays an undated article quoting Finance Minister Colm Imbert as having denied any plans to raise the retirement age, in his budget speech he had hinted at a rise by saying a higher retirement age already existed in Jamaica and Barbados. Repeated auditors' reports for the National Insurance Board had spoken of a shrinking pool of contributors alongside more claimants. All right, I've spoken about that multiple times before. There is a factual basis that there are less people paying into the National Insurance Fund, and there are going to be more people needing money out from the fund. That's what happens when you have an aging population, as many areas in the more developed world has. What is the benefit of extending to 65? Well, the benefit of extending to 65 is that anyone who is between the ages of 60 to 65, you no longer have to pay out a pension to them, so you have less people getting money from the National Insurance Board, and anyone between the ages of 60 to 65 may still now be paying into the National Insurance Fund, so you have more people paying in, so you get more money coming in and less money going out. And the reality is, it's a brutal and maybe callous reality when you think about it like this, but between the ages of 60 to 65, some of those people who would have once collected that pension would die. That's just a fact. They would die, and you may never have to pay them that pension now. So you would save quite a bit of money just by that 5-year increase in age. The government would save money. Nissi says, I find they could have leave the senior citizens to travel for free to Tobago though. I agree with that. The benefit is they paid for a shorter time and they die faster after retiring. Yeah. Saving money is the main benefit. And the minister spoke about the fact that it is that the age is higher in Jamaica and Barbados. And like they regularly do this. And I encourage people always to have some perspective, understand that things are better here than other places in certain areas. That's important. But I also think that the ministers have to understand those aren't viable excuses. People want to live in a country where things are better. Saying that, look, things are worse in that country, so you should feel better about getting things worse here now. Yeah, that doesn't really do anything for people. That doesn't help. It's good to see that, yes, some other people might have it worse, but I had it better. Why is it going worse now? That's the question that people would have. And the aging population may have something to do with it. But as the independent senator said, I could see some of this having some deleterious effects on people's mental health. I am telling you. I know some, especially like people in the more self-employed, smaller employed side, they would have been counting down, waiting on that 60 years. They would have been waiting. There are some people who were waiting on that. I remember in the 2010 election when the partnership came into power, the partnership snuck in inside of their manifesto. They promised that they were going to drop the old age pension age from 60 to 62, from 65 to 62, or 65 to 60, something like that. They promised they were going to drop the pension age. And that got a whole lot of people in that kind of younger pension age voting for them, because there are many people working right now who would much rather collect a pension and relax home with the grandchildren. There are people like that out there. Now, back when it was the People's Partnership, when they won, they said, we were sorry, it was a typo. Yes, that is the excuse they went with. It was a typo in the printing of their manifesto. They didn't mean to actually lower the pension age. And now we are seeing, yeah, the age is going up. Tough. Tough. But according to what is said, may be unavoidable. That is their only strategy. Let's look at them who worst off. Now be grateful. Yeah, that's not necessarily a good strategy. Like, I remember I've heard an older person always used to tell me this. I don't know how many of you know this song by Brother Relator and Lord Pretender, was it? Never worry about a thing. Always consider somebody suffering more than you. Right. And I always, an older guy always used to tell me that the idea that somebody's suffering more than me does not actually console my suffering. And I get that, you know. I really do get that. The idea that someone is suffering more than you is a great idea to get global perspective and for you to, you know, be a more mature human being. But when you are in your own pressure, if you break your little finger, something happens and someone slams a door on your little finger and it's broken, and you're screaming looking at your broken little finger, your broken pinky, and someone comes and tells you, well, you know, there are people out there with broken necks, you know. You have to be grateful that it's only a pinky break, you know. It could have been a neck break, you know. Well, in that moment, while you're staring at your pinky broken and screaming out your lung, if someone tells you that, you may try to reach for their neck. That's not something that actually consoles somebody. That, you know, when you're suffering, yeah, there's somebody suffering more than you. Listen, I don't care. I am suffering. That's the main matter here. I am suffering. So there's somebody suffering more than me. Don't tell me what's the reality in Jamaica and Grenada. There are some islands that you strangle them with your 8 fingers. There are some islands where there's no pension. There are some countries in the world there's no pension. You get old and good luck. I hope you made some grandbabies to look after you. That's the reality of life. Pension is a privilege of a more developed, a wealthier country. If we weren't a very wealthy country, then there's nothing such as pension. You have to try and save your money for when you get old, or you have to try and make sure you make enough babies so that your babies could make babies and your little babies that made babies would be able to take care of you in your old age. That's what had to happen. But we are in some privilege. Yes, we understand there are some places where that doesn't exist, but when you're talking about it here, that's not good reasoning. Now, we did go through the fact of why this is happening. And there is a factual basis. There is some reality to the fact that we have an aging population. These things are very unfortunate and in how they are handled, because they seem to come so suddenly upon us. Like, shocking, we have an aging population. But if we have an aging population at 60, the makeup of that demographic would have been known since they were born. Are you trying to tell me that no one 30 years ago could have forecasted the problem that we have right now so that we wouldn't have had something so shocking, or we wouldn't have something so shocking as people people working for, let's say people worked for 30 years expecting that they're going to retire next year, and then they're hearing now that no, you actually have 5 more years of work. Couldn't we have had a more long-term plan that would have been able to smooth this out? Well, maybe we could have, but that's not the nature of politics. Dial Singh, Vision 2020 was not a PNM thing. And he went through here and he was talking about the Vision 2020. I don't know how many of you are old enough in the life here or paying attention enough to remember the good old Vision 2020, where they had a plan for where Trinidad would have been by 2020. This plan was created, I believe, by the Patrick Manning PNM government. And I always had some favor for that idea. The very fact that they had a plan existing beyond just the 5-year reign of the political election in Trinidad and Tobago, because that's what is needed. If you really want to make sensible plans for a country, for a society, you can't be talking about planning things for just the next 2 years. That's how you end up with shocking changes like, oops, gas doubles in price in 3 years. Oops. That's how you end up with things like that, because you don't have long-term planning. Minister of Health Terence Dial Singh says that one of the key hurdles in achieving long-term national development is the lack of consistency between programs during different political administrations. Responding to concerns from Independent Senator Dr. Varma Dial Singh, his cousin, over TT's 5-year political cycle hampering meaningful development in the Senate on Thursday, Dial Singh said he understood the challenges faced in maintaining strategies over successive governments. Referring to the Economic Development Plan Vision 2020, which was launched by Prime Minister Patrick Manning in 2005, Dial Singh said, while the program gathered academics and experts of different political persuasions to work together, it was rejected by the People's Partnership Administration, which entered office 5 years later. Dial Singh argued that such behavior is not conducive to long-term development. Vision 2020 was not a PNM thing. That's what he said. However, when 2010 came and Kamala Persad-Bissessar and the UNC came into office, do you know what was the outcome of Vision 2020? The UNC government dumped it in the labas. They collected all the copies at the Ministry of Public Administration. All the copies, cities had copies. We are suffering today because of the lost years between 2010 and 2015. Now, I have no doubt that what the minister is talking about here, he's sticking in some personal politics inside of this. Oh, good night, Ria. What's the good? What's the good? I have no doubt that he is politicking inside of there. I have no doubt about that. That what he is saying has something to do with the fact that he is a PNM minister, so obviously he will criticize what the UNC did. I don't deny, though, that the criticism has some merit, because it's very difficult for a country to have good functioning long-term plans. What we're talking about why it's so difficult for the country to have long-term plans. That was connected to the fact that the Attorney General is saying that this coming year they're going to raise the retirement age from 60 to 65. He's bringing legislation to raise the retirement age from 60 to 65. And this is being suddenly put upon us, even though just the last few years the minister was saying that this is not going to happen. He promised they weren't going to raise that age. Well, yes, they are going to raise that age. And part of the problems why a lot of these things happen so suddenly in Trinidad and Tobago and in many countries is because it's difficult to plan things on a long-term scale. I'm saying if we have an aging population, that's not something that happens in 2 years. You don't wake up in 2020 from a shocking revelation in 2019 that, wow, we just got an aging population. This is something that you would have seen developing in our population demographics over a long period of time. So in order to really have a successful vision, you need visions that would last over the spans of 20, 30, 40, 50 years. That's the kind of planning that is required to really have good functioning long-term visions. But that's very difficult to have when you have the political cycle changing every 5 years. You could have this government trying to make a long-term plan that next 20 years down the road, this is what is going to happen. Then they come out of power in the next 5 years, and whoops, that all changes in the opposite direction. Since even before coming into power, they were supposed to have a plan to implement. Yeah, that makes sense, and I totally agree with that. But even if you have that plan since even before in power, bear in mind you are coming into power with a plan already in place. So if you have created a plan on your own before you came into power, now that you come into power and you are going to implement the plan that you had, that you created, by you implementing this plan, what you are doing is undoing the plan of the previous administration. So the very thing you are saying there, the very thing you are saying there is the reason why there's a problem. Yes, now you are changing the goalposts and saying, well, now the parties need to work together. But what you said first was they need to make a plan from before, and that's what they do. That's the way they function. I, as a political party, I have the secret on how to run this country, so I'm making my plans on how to do it. And when I get into power, scrap everything that was going on before. I am going to implement this plan and making the country go forward. And then the next political party comes in, they have that same mindset too. When I come into power, I'm going to implement the plan to really fix this. And they do the same thing, and they do the same thing, and there's no continuity. Now, that's why something on the global scale, countries like China are having succession in certain things. China has a planned economy. It's difficult for them, it's supposed to be difficult for them to be very competitive on the global market. But what China has is the ability to plan things on a long-term basis. They could do 50-year plans because the government isn't changing in China. It's been the same government. They could function on 100-year timelines. Patricia Chaitan says, if that retirement age moved to 65, I'll have to buy a walking stick to go to work. Ria says, no, I meant that I don't think the PNM came in with a proper plan. Well, the fact that you put proper in there puts a qualifier, and, well, maybe they didn't come in with a proper plan, according to what you mean by proper. But I'm sure they came in with a plan. I don't think any government comes in without a plan at all. Rulipoli says then they would take up the vision when in power, and the competition would be who implemented better. They were seeing the failures and shortcomings. Why not take what's working and change what's not? I am sure if you ask a government minister, that's what they will promise that they're doing. They would promise that's what they're doing. Give politicians a retirement age too, and that will sort out our national vision problem. I don't think so. Where's the proper plan? Where's the thought process that, hey, this is what is needed, this is what isn't working, etc., etc., etc. I am telling you, I'm certain if you ask them, they will say that they do have such plans. I don't think the plans are necessarily working, but I am pretty sure they would tell you that they do have those plans. Another plan, for example, Sinanand. This was an interesting one I saw there. Lake Asphalt UE to help improve TT roads. Something hopeful for the future. Works and Transport Minister Rohan Sinanand said a partnership between Trinidad Lake Asphalt and UE will help improve the quality of roads in TT. The minister said the asphalt-based cement developed by Trinidad Lake Asphalt, which is currently used for airports, highways, and major roads, will now be used on secondary and tertiary roads. So something like this again. We've had Lake Asphalt in Trinidad for how many decades? We've had the UE in Trinidad for how many decades? And only now we've realized that we could use these assets to actually figure out how to best pave our roads. Shocking. Absolutely shocking. And then they may develop a whole new company to work together with UE, and they have a tripartite committee. They sit together with UE, the Trinidad Asphalt, and the members of the work ministry, and they figure out a plan. And then come next, when is the next election? Next 2 years, 3 years? It's like, whoops, the government changes, and that whole plan, well, they aren't doing that anymore. Hear me out, the government doesn't know how to utilize our resources. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And I think that's a problem in not with our government. Because everybody degrees law. I don't think it's a problem with a degree in law. I don't think that's the problem. I think the idea that the educated professionals would be able to do it better, that is the lie. That right there is the problem. The idea that educated professionals, you could put enough educated professionals at the top of something and they would be able to figure out how best to solve the problem. Yeah, I think that is the problem right there. I do believe they don't know how to utilize our resources. And I don't believe that is our government problem. I think that is a government problem. Governments cannot centrally plan because central planning isn't possible. You No one person is smart enough to figure out what should be done with all these resources. That's the purpose of a free market. That's the purpose that you have the free market there, so that the free market could have individuals that decide how best to utilize resources. We are being controlled by the government. We are slaves, brainwashed. I disagree with that. I disagree with that. We are being controlled by the government to some extent. Yes, that is true. That's par for the course. We are not slaves. I think to call ourselves slaves is to insult the legacy and memory of people who really suffered in slavery and the reality of the people currently suffering in slavery. It's kind of a spit in the face. Yo, Roni, Hempress, Roni, Hempress, what's going on there, Roni? I think it's kind of a spit in the face for us to sit in air-conditioned rooms in the comfort of soft sofas and high-speed internet with expensive mobile devices and sit in all this luxury, and because our government doesn't give us enough free things, we say that we are slaves, and then there are people out there that are really slaves and are being beaten and starved and worked to the bone, not getting paid for it. They're actually slaves. Yeah. For us to call ourselves slaves and there are people like that, I think it's a kind of spit in the face to them, to be very honest. I understand the sentiment you're saying, though, that to some extent, what the government does is dishonest in how it makes it seem like the government is really here for our benefit. I don't necessarily think so. The idea was that previously in history, the way the world used to run was that the leaders used to be the elites used to be people who wanted to just exercise power over the masses. The emperors, the kings, the authoritarian warlords that ruled with an iron fist. But now we have enlightened governments that are no longer like that. No. The people that woke up on a Sunday morning and wanted to conquer the whole world, those people don't exist anymore. We have democratic governments that are elected by the people and work for the people. I disagree with that. And if that's what you mean, okay, I could go down that road with you. I disagree with that. I don't think that's the existence that we have. I do think that a lot of the people in power right now in governance are just the modern version of the elites that always existed. The modern version of the people who would have been the monarchs of times gone before. If you look at how a lot of these people treat themselves, they act like they believe they deserve more than you. So, no surprise in that. We need problem solvers. I'm realizing that too. They're not here to benefit anyone but themselves. I'm realizing that now. What we talking about? Well, we talking about all kind of things, Rooney, because you're in here kind of on the tail end of all of this. So we're just kind of discussing at this point. If you're talking about what we spoke about for the night, well, what we spoke about the work from home policy that they're dragging their foot on, that they're contradicting themselves about left, right, and center. Then we spoke about the fact that, we spoke about guns, and an independent senator that was saying that if the government was caring enough, they would have allowed more people, the citizens, to access guns. They would have allowed the fisher folk and the farmers to access guns. He was lamenting that they destroyed 7,000 guns the other day, while they could have just sold that back at a cheaper price to the farmers, allowing them to defend themselves. That's a senator after my own heart. Like, sir, You could get my vote. We're talking now. We also spoke, that same senator spoke about mental health and the effect of the effect of the budget, and being in tandem with the pandemic, following the pandemic, the effect of the budget on people's mental health, the negative effects, and I'm pretty sure it would have a negative effect. And from that negative effect, we went on. And from that negative effect, we went on to, to speak about the fact that the Attorney General has promised to raise the retirement age from 60 to 65 in the coming year. So yeah, if you're thinking that you might have some negative effects on your mental health because of some strict measures in the budget, well, if you were waiting to retire at 60 and 60 was right around the corner, well, you'd have to go around that corner and walk a little longer. It's not right around the corner anymore. It's right around the corner, and then you walk for 5 more miles. You walk for 5 more years after you bend that corner for 60. Yeah, take 5 more years, and then you would reach that retirement age. So, and then from there we went on. What is that senator's name? That is Independent Senator Dr. Varma Diyal Singh, the cousin of Terence Diyal Singh, who is the government Minister of Health. But he's an independent senator. Dr. Varma Diyal Singh is also a psychiatrist, I believe. And then we went on from the raising of the pension age to mention the fact that the reason we have sudden changes like this happening in our country, we have sudden changes on something as predictable as an aging population. An aging population isn't something that rushes up and shocks you. You could watch people as they age. People age 1 year at a time. It's not something that really catches you by surprise. But it could seem like it catches a nation like us by surprise because we don't have long-term style planning. And that's the last thing we were speaking about there, where we quoted from the Minister of Health, where he lamented that the Vision 2020 that was put in place by the Patrick Manning government was thrown out by the Kamala Prasad government when they came into power. And regularly you see things like this happening. Visions and goals could only last the length of time that the party in power can last. And in the nature of how our democratic systems work, that has a kind of two-edged sword negative working on both sides. So if you change parties regular, then you get a lot of discontinuity. You get a lot of discontinuity in the vision for the country, and development stagnates. But then if you keep one party in for a lengthy period of time, they may be able to get a lot done. They may be able to focus in on their vision, but then they become so locked in that they're the establishment, and now they're actually hard to move. And if they become corrupt, then their corruption becomes kind of cast into the very structure of the country because they're in there for a long time. So if you want that democratic freedom, you would want to change parties regular enough. But then if you want that progress and that stability, you'd want to keep parties. And you have that kind of working going on. Now, if it was possible that a lot of the parties, as someone said there, a lot of the parties were able to work together and you could have a common goal working regardless of which party changes, that would be a benefit. And in some countries, they have things closer to that. So, for example, Israel. Israel has a governing system much more similar to that. I know there may be some detractors of Israel, that may be what it might be, but the governing structure of Israel is such that they change leaders pretty regularly. But just about any leader that Israel brings in has generally around the same direction goal that they're aiming the country for. So Israel has been able to remarkably continue surviving and thriving to some extent, even in what might be very difficult situations for some countries. Roly Poly asks, why do they still blame Kamala for everything after 7 years if they did not re-implement the vision? 7 years was enough time to implement if they really had a vision. There are 2 ways you could think about it. I could speak about it as an excuse for them on their side. There is a viable possibility that if too much corruption occurred during the period when we had our boom, we may not have enough resources for us to be able to execute a successful vision very easily when we're having difficult times. So you could be pointing back even 7 years down the road at the fact that someone spent out a lot of money previously, and that is affecting you now. If you're thinking as, like, let's say you're someone around the millennial age group, let's say you're 30, you just hit 30. 7 years ago, you would have been 23. Let's say you had a bank account, your parents created a bank account for you, and there was $300,000 in it in that account. And 7 years ago, you had a sibling that spent out $200,000 out of the account. 7 years down the road now, you would have done quite a bit of things. You would have changed this. You may have been working for yourself, etc., etc. There is a reasonable argument that you could still be negatively affected by what the person spent out 7 years ago. That is a reasonable argument. And being that the person would have been in governance, decisions that they made 7 years ago would still be having ripple effects, continuous effects, even now. Because that's the whole thing. Governance, you can make changes. You make changes that affect and affect things throughout the country. So yes, there's a viable argument that negative things done can still be having an effect now. That's part of the reason they could still be blaming her. However, I kind of agree on that front that there's no sensible way you could blame her in making your own new policy. Here's what I'll say. I'll say I understand on a political front. You're lambasting your opposition. You want to make sure that people never forget how bad your opposition was. Great, I understand that on a political front. But when it comes to the point of making your own policies, when you're talking about pushing your own policy, it does not make sense for, while you're pushing your policy, using the failures of the previous administration to give your policy a little breaks, to cushion the negative effects of your policy. That one does not make sense to me. It doesn't add to that. But I understand why they would say that. All right, it's a Friday night. We're discussing any further questions or comments. Any further questions or comments while we're chilling? Can the now government get more money from 5? Hey, I don't know. I think they were doing something to work that out, and then I think there was some kind of settlement that happened. I think, if I remember the article correctly, there was something going on where WASA was trying to deal with that, and then there was, I feel like I vaguely remember some kind of settlement going on because WASA was printing names in the newspapers, and then someone didn't want one name printed, and then they alleged that they actually settled and they paid some of the money, and that $1 per year hurts my soul. Yes, correct, Roly Poly, correct. Lambast and work, whistle and ride, multitask out there. Okay, anything further, folks, or is that it for this Mindful Live? And I will see you guys on Monday. All right, well, it seems like we are wrapping up here. If you are looking at this over on YouTube on the replay, hit that like button. Please do that. If you spent all this time taking it in on replay, you can hit that like button, drop a comment, tell me what you think if you are taking this in over on YouTube on the replay. And as per usual, this was brought to you by Mindful Education, Mindful_education, Mindful with 2 L's. Our page is over there on Instagram if you are interested in it. We're offering learning pods from preschool ages straight up to CXC, multiple streams. They're in-person classes with very small classes, and the intention is using homeschool style teaching, not aiming to create the classroom effect, but to create that homeschool effect in a small group and impart knowledge. Several streams available if you are interested in such. Mindful Education classes are starting from tomorrow. We'll be kicking off some classes, so stay tuned. Yes, Nisi, what's good? What's the good? People are fed up, but would it be better? Let's see. Would what be better? I don't know what you're talking about. If you're talking about mindful education, if learning pods would... Don't do me that, you see? If learning pods would be better than classrooms, well, then yes, Hempress Roni, yes, most certainly. The effect of learning pods is without a doubt. If you're doubting it, sign up, sign your child up, sign your charge up, and you will see it. You will see that effect once your child is working. Okay. Any other questions or comments, folks? Or we're calling it a night and a week? Okay, that seems like it's the week there. It's the night there. I hope you guys were entertained, educated, or informed. And I will see you guys for the next Mindful Live on Monday. You also need to vote smarter. Well, maybe. I will see you guys for the next Mindful Live on Monday, 9:15 p.m. Until then, peace out, folks. Peace, 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 peace. Laters.